Welcome back to another episode of TEYARA SMP, a TNP Limitless 7 series. And we are here at the Foundry, and, well, you can see, potentially, that I've done some digging. The windmill is not currently operational just yet, and that's for a very good reason. I decided that I wanted to get a lot of automation stuff done. And thus, I have decided to get full bore into Embers. Now, it doesn't look like a whole lot right now, and obviously, I'm not worried about the aesthetics whatsoever. So this room, the walls are going to be very different. But we have, from front to back, we've got some Ember relays, which, if you're familiar with the mod, you will know is going to convey our embers. And if you're not familiar with the mod, then what I'm going to do is we have an Ember Activator, and I'm planning on putting it this end because I decided, or rather, because further into the mod, I think it's somewhere in here, there is like a pressurized Ember thing that effectively converts the Ember crystals that we have into Ember more efficiently. So I figure that what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift around the blast furnace and the coke oven a little bit in order to find the best, arrangement. And rather than having two create blasting areas, we're just going to have one. And that'll save us some power and also potentially mean that we can blast faster by increasing the RPMs of the fans involved. So that should ultimately be at least equivalent, if not outright better. And then we're going to put in the Embers, pressure refiner instead. And so that's why I want this position to be free for that, depending upon how large it is, that is. I haven't gotten to the phase where I can see it's going to be that large, or, small enough to fit within the designated zone. So the plans could shift yet again. It's just what I want to do. I'm intending for my ember source to be over here. After all, the embers are going to come from the mine, and eventually this is going to be like a minecart / staircase down to the mine storage. So we need easy transit for the embers, and I figure, just having the embers making thing right here is the easiest way for us to do that. All that to say, we're making our embers over here. We're piping them all the way down this series of relays, and you can also see that we've got a fluid pipe that's running all the length of this thing as well. And what is it going to power? Well, first it's going to be received by this ember receptor, and then it'll go into this copper coil where it'll function as effectively an embers battery. Now that's cool and all, but what's with all the other stuff? So we've got one emitter pointed down to yet another receptor and copper cell, which is a battery. We've got levers all over the place because you need them to activate the ember emitters. And then we have a couple of devices here that is going to help us get started. So one thing we have is the melter. It's the only thing in this pack, I think, that creates molten metal. And the reason, of course, we don't have Tinker's Construct in this pack or anything like that. So this really is the only mod that uses molten metal whatsoever. There are a couple of other things, like I believe Mystical Agriculture has some molten, or not molten per se, but liquid supremium and all that stuff. And I don't think we're gonna need that. At the very least, we don't need it right now, and also it's not made with embers, so that's perfectly fine. But the melter, what it does is effectively like Tinker's Construct, is that if you have ore, and I mean ore in the stone form, like if I had a Silk Touch pick or something like that, and I put ore into here, it gives something like 2 2/3 ingots per block smelted. But wait, there's more. We also have this Geologic Separator, and if I go ahead and search up molten here, and I click on iron, for example, so the melter itself, as I said, will convert 1 iron ore into, 2 ingots, 6 nuggets, which is 2 2/3. But if we have other ores, then we can also get a little bit of iron from melting those as well, thanks to the Geologic Separator. It's literally free extra stuff. And I don't know if I'm potentially going to get Silk Touch first, or if I'm going to get Fortune, or some other ore refinement method. But right now the plan is, I guess, probably to process everything through the Create crafting wheels, just because I don't have Fortune or Silk Touch yet. And then that'll ore double, with the possibility for, a certain percentage of ore tripling. And then I'll smelt that stuff. You have to, because this doesn't accept dusts. It accepts ores, raw variants of the metals, and ingots, of course, and other stuff that you can make with them. So you basically melt the stuff down, and then this is where we have to start talking about my crazy fluid piping stuff that we have here. And the idea is that everything in Embers seems to have a capacity. You can see that the fluid extractor has a certain number of millibuckets, the pipes have a certain number of millibuckets, the fluid transfer, which is effectively like a fluid diode, has a certain number of buckets, millibuckets, that is. And so I need everything to be able to be drained out of itself at the end of the processing, and so this is not going to be an exact science. I'm sure there are ways to make it an exact science, but I'm not doing that, because this is my very first Embers setup, because I didn't get that far in FTB Horizons 3. I gotta sleep. Okay, so where was I at? Yes, levers and stuff potentially having excess fluids that I am not prepared to drain at a given moment or anything like that. So we have a very complex system of fluid transfers and pipes that I'm hoping will permit me to siphon every last drop of fluid out of each of the mechanisms that, can contain fluid in this whole mess. And then it'll pipe it into this fluid vessel, wherein we can either pump it out to a spout, or we can pump it out the other side, which is where we're going to get into some of the stuff on camera. Then on the other side of that, we have a mixing centrifuge. And if we take a look at, I think, Machinations of Fire, yes. So the mixing centrifuge effectively has 4 fluid inputs and then 1 output. And of course it requires embers like everything else in this pack. So if we take a look at the molten recipes, iron for instance, let's just go to the mixing centrifuge. And there are a couple of recipes here, like nickel and copper. That's one we're going to be dealing with. We can get constantan, we can get brass, we can get electrum, bronze, and I think dawnstone. I believe that's all the one. Oh no, invar. We can also get invar early on, I should say. So that's like 5 alloy recipes that we can get from mixing, but you'll notice one very important thing, and that's that only 2 of the slots are ever used in any of the recipes in this pack. And so if we sort of trace the fluids, what I'm expecting is we're going to have a whole bunch of fluid reservoirs down here that I'm going to get to on camera, as I mentioned, and we want to be able to pump those molten metals into either the spout, the mixer, and one thing that's going to be down here as well. And so we've set up various junctions and fluid vessels to effectively allow us to limit the amount of fluids transferred. And then I've also added in several layers of redundancy that should being the operative word, allow us to pipe fluids back into each of the reservoirs. Because if we take a look at this again, there are 17 molten metals here, and you might think to yourself, wait a minute, I really quickly counted that there are 16 reservoir slots here, at least based upon what there is on the map and what I can see on screen, and you'd be absolutely right. That is because this early on in the game, I can't really get my hands on platinum whatsoever. And the reason for that is because the only ways to get platinum, if memory serves, are... Come on, where are the bees? One of these things is bees. Nope, not the blasting. Not that. Not that. We have... Oh! Huh. Yeah, no, I understand why. Because I need to be looking at this platinum dust. And this platinum dust can only be gotten from productive bees, platinum comb block. So I have to get really lucky and get a platinum bee, or make a platinum bee, I guess. Or alchemistry, which I'm not doing yet. So you can make platinum from chemical interactions, oxygen and ytterbium. And basically you just make enough platinum in order to, well, turn it into dust and then smelt it up. And, well, ignoring platinum, because if we take a look at its uses, there are very limited uses, especially in embers. The only things we can do are make plates, ingots, and nuggets, and we can already do all of those things outside of embers. There's no point in doing it, especially because I can't actually get platinum yet. So we just have 16 molten metals, including all of the alloys that we can make, and so 16 reservoir slots that we will be building very shortly. Each of those reservoirs can independently be turned on and pumped into this fluid vessel, wherein we have 3 outputs on it, 2 of which go into the mixing centrifuge, because we only ever need 2 slots for mixing recipes in this pack. Very easy. The last one goes all the way up to the fluid vessel, which is our return trip and or allows us to pump into the spout. Now, you're probably wondering, why is there a create spout there? And the answer is because I need buckets of these molten metals. And why do I need that? Because of, where is the thing that I'm looking for? Fluid transfers. Fluid transfers, in addition to acting like diodes in a circuit where it only allows fluids to flow one direction, they can also act as filters. And as far as my understanding of embers goes, and I'm probably going to end up breaking a whole lot of stuff, the only way to ensure that liquids, like, sort themselves is by using these fluid transfers with, you know, the given filter, liquid filter. I'm tripping over my words. But the point is, you need to get a bucket of the molten metal in order to apply it as a filter on these fluid transfers, and otherwise we'd just get fluid trying to flow into all of the different reservoirs that we build out and not really functioning properly, as we saw with the Ember Bore when I first made it and didn't know why things weren't flowing through correctly. So let's start placing down some of this stuff. You can also see that we've got a bunch of other materials that we're going to need later in the build, but for now we just need these reservoirs first, and I have been waiting such a long time to put these down. Now you can see that they also have a 3x3 area, and so that means these things are rather large. And the thing is, with the reservoirs, these bases don't actually have any fluid capacity. But each of these rings, these Caminite gauges and valves, if I'm understanding everything correctly, should add 40 buckets worth of fluid storage, I think. And it's also very aesthetically pleasing. So the idea is that we only need 2 outputs. Is that right? Let me think about this. Yeah, we need 2 outputs and 1 input for each of these things. Now, there is 1 input-output on the bottom of these reservoirs, which we will be using to output, and I guess we'll go downstairs real quick. We're going to use it to output to the stamper, which I picked up. But the stamper is effectively something that allows us to cast molten metal, and will also be integral into getting into Embers alchemy, which is another reason why I've hollowed out 2 areas down here. I kind of anticipate the stamper to go over here, and then the alchemy stuff to go over here, if that's large enough. I'm not entirely sure, but that's also why we have the copper cell down here, because those will require Ember Power. Coming back up, let's finish out a whole tank before I get off on another diatribe. So we're going to do 2 Caminite gauges, which allows us to see stuff, and then we should, I think this is the correct position. Is that right? I'm now wondering if I've done the maths correctly, and I'm coming up against maybe not. Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6. Yeah. I think that's how I wanted to lay it out. I might change this up a little bit, but we can use the Caminite valves as more inputs and outputs. Now, right here, it's empty. Oh yeah, and we can see the capacity by staring at the Caminite valves. We have 200 buckets of molten metal for each of the 16 types of metals. And yeah, that's probably well more than I'm ever going to need. But the nice thing is that this is going to permit us to, well, design a really nice system, I think. And the other silly thing that I realized while I was doing all this stuff, so I might switch out some of these rings for more gauges, is that only 7 of the 16 metals, I think, end up in these centrifuge recipes, if I counted correctly. So I don't need nearly as many of these Caminite valves as I thought I did, and I also don't really need as many of these fluid extractors as I thought I did, because that's how we're going to output everything from each of these, well, massive reservoir type things. I'm going to go ahead and build these out the rest of the way, and then we'll start talking about some of the routing and hopefully getting this thing powered so that we can start getting some of the molten metals in here and test if this thing actually works. Oh goodness, well, now that I've built that out, this looks a lot more intimidating, particularly because we don't have the lighting. So I don't know if I'm going to be using, like, I think it's called like an ancient light from Embers, which is unfortunately a little bit beyond my means, just because I don't quite have access to alchemy just yet. But for now, I'm just gonna put some torches in opposite each of these here. So in order to make these things look less like they're hovering in midair, and because I don't know what we're doing with the ceiling, make it look less like they are, hanging from the ceiling, we are going to add these ashen brick walls as supports. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that down the whole row. I don't have nearly enough in my inventory, but I have made a whole bunch in the mine storage. So I'm just going to go ahead and do some more building real quick. And the next time we're going to cut straight to actually doing some of this stuff, because at that point in time, I think I'll have my heat exchangers set up, or not heat exchanger, the Ember Activator and the additional heat exchangers, which should give us some extra bonus. And then, theoretically, we'll be melting some stuff and testing the filters, and then we can expand the system even more to start doing, the mixing and the stamping and all that good stuff. But I really want to test that my filter architecture is going to work the way that I think it is. And, well, we are going to be testing that live, so I have a feeling that things are going to go very wrong or very right. And, well, you get to see my reaction firsthand when we get there. Now, we're still not quite ready to activate the Ember Activator. I need to figure out how we get materials in, probably through the base, I'm guessing, and also how these heat exchangers work, because they add, like, a flat bonus for having grit in them or something like that, and I'm not sure how we input to those, so I need to read the manual just a little bit more. But we can demonstrate the linking process. So you right-click on the first thing with your hammer, and then you right-click on the second thing with your hammer, and then theoretically, that's all linked up. Now, I've already done all of these relays, and down into pretty much everything, except because we broke the receiver, we do need to relink this emitter down into there, and because we don't have any receivers down here, we don't have to worry about these emitters just yet. We're still not quite ready to activate this thing just yet, but I've been doing some maths and learning about how the heat exchanger and the activator works. So basically the heat exchanger, it multiplies the amount of embers that a fuel naturally has by 0.9, but it also adds the flat bonus of 300. So as long as your as long as 90% of your fuel is less than 300, this is always going to be a benefit to you. Now, the thing that I'm not sure about is whether or not we can use multiple heat exchangers, and this is just something that we're going to have to determine experimentally. But theoretically, that also means that we could use up to a maximum, unless this thing has an input on the bottom that I don't know about, we could use up to a maximum of 3 heat exchangers, and then the input being on the 4th slot or something like that. And I did the maths, and effectively what that is your fuel times 0.9 to the nth power, where n is the number of heat exchangers, plus n times 300. And that almost always, at least insofar as just the 1 through 3 that I did just now, that'll always work out that having heat exchangers is always a good idea, especially if you're using grit for fuel, which, I mean, 0 times anything is still 0, so it's just infinitely beneficial to have these heat exchangers. It's technically slower than using any crystals to power your stuff, but the point is, these heat exchangers really make lower levels of fuel more powerful, and so this is really going to help us out in the beginning. And I'm going to try to figure out if double heat exchangers are doing anything, or if it's really just add 1, and that's it. That's all you get. Now I have to figure out how I'm going to input things. I'm probably just going to be lazy at the start and put like chest here, hopper here, pointed into the activator, and then we'll, turn on our lever, and we'll start firing embers down at our storage cell down there. But, yeah, let's jump to the moment of truth, if we please. Alrighty, I've toggled the Caminite lever on, and we have a hopper here pointed into the thing. Moment of truth, let's put some grit in. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, okay, well that doesn't travel the way I expected it to. It's kind of dashing in and out of the ceiling. Oh, but we are getting embers in the receiving coil. The problem is I don't think I have the, right goggles to tell exactly what quantity of embers is in this, so I might have to find that real quick. But we are at the very least transferring embers all the way down, and it's kind of magnificent to watch. I do wish they fired a straighter path, but I mean, hey, sine waves. That's kind of cool, right? Okay, we want to test the melter first, so I'm gonna go ahead and... Oh, heh, alright, turns out that I'm actually prepared. Let's go ahead and put some of this stuff in the melter. Can I do that? Is that... Oh no, it's the top chamber. Yes, okay. So I'm gonna toggle this lever, and yes, okay, very good. So now the melter is going, and we shouldn't actually get anything here, but we should start seeing this turn into molten iron. Yes, it's working! It's working! Now, there's only one of these fluid transfers set up because the idea is I only want it to be able to go to the one place, and right now, theoretically that's the only place it can go, right? So, once I have gotten enough, once I've got 1,000 millibuckets, or 1 full bucket of iron, we can pump that into my spout, and the problem is I haven't set up the drain just yet, so I'm gonna have to hold on to the molten iron until... Oh no, I have set up the drain, yes, because I was smart and I piped it back into the system. Alright, well this is great. And yes, now we have a full bucket of the stuff. This should be pumped into the vessel. Oh, that happened instantly. That's kind of interesting. So now let's go ahead and turn this lever on. So now it should be in this vessel, which is obscured by our cell. And now we should be able to toggle this on. Yes. Let's see. So that's empty. Ah, yes, but the molten iron is now in there, and I don't want it to be in there, so we toggle that off, and I take my bucket out. Well, I take my bucket out, so I'm going to need to put in stairs or something like that. I'm going to need to put in something to elevate me up just so I can grab the buckets, or move this down. I don't really intend to do it that way, though, because I like having access to the item drain right here. Yeah, and I can just do that now. And so now, theoretically, I should be able to toggle this lever on, which should put it into the fluid vessel, which is currently at 360. You should empty out, which you have. And you are now 710. Haha, beautiful. Alright, so that's one part of the drainage system tested. Now let's do this one. That's now empty. You are now at over a bucket, yes. Okay, the melter is still going. That's perfectly fine, because it is now currently both states on into the fluid vessel, and oh my god, you guys, for my genius plan, I forgot to actually put the molten iron on the filter. Okay, I swear, this time I'm not going to drain the thing. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to right-click with my molten iron, and now we've got a filter. We theoretically have a filter, so, how do I want to do this? The real test would be to put in another one here, and see, well, no, but I don't have any method of draining it out just yet, so that's a bad idea. So the real test will come when we have a second fluid that we can try to put into the system. And I do have some copper, so I guess we could potentially do that. Okay, but now everything is in the fluid vessel with the molten iron, and if I just toggle this lever now, moment of truth, come on, go into the thing. You are in the thing. Oh, this is beautiful. This is fantastic. Now, the problem with this is I'm going to have to remember to turn the levers off when I'm done with them. Classic old school manual factory stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and test the copper next. We've got just over a bucket there. Into the mix, please. Thank you. Drain the rest back into the cell. Not the cell, the vessel. Yep. Take the thing. I really need to put in stairs, or, you know, just a slab or something. Eat some toast. Get out our fluid transfer, and we're going to just put it next to... Actually, you know what? We're not going to put it there. We're going to put it here instead. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Put the molten copper in the filter. Drain the molten copper back into the place with the thing. These pipes are remarkably fast. And sleep. Now this is the real moment of truth. Is the pipe going to start hissing, or because I have the fluid transfer here, it's going to go into the correct tank? And I think it's going to go into the correct tank, but... moment of truth. It went into the correct tank. Oh, it went into the correct tank. Yes. Oh, that's satisfying. We've got power. We've got magical power. So, a couple of things have been changed, some purely aesthetically, some very much functionally. One of the aesthetic things is I've temporarily moved the heat exchanger up here, because by putting the Ember emitter in line with all of the relays, well, it just fires in a line. And the thing that I didn't realize, but, you know, confirmed experimentally just by doing that, is the reason that we had a sine wave between all of our repeaters is because the emitter had that initial... like Y value to traverse or whatever. So because there was a slope upwards, it necessarily had to correct and come back down. And, well, the best way to do that is a sine wave. I mean, honestly, it's a really cool emergent property that I will not be taking advantage of right here, because right here is not the place for it aesthetically. But I'm definitely going to keep that in mind down the road. Now, the second thing you may have noticed is that I've added a whole bunch of piping on the second layer here, and 7 of these tanks, if memory serves, have these extra fluid transfers out of them. Those are all of the ones that end up being mixed into alloys. 4 of them are here on the right side, so in order to get over to, well, I guess that would be the west side of the room, we have opted to take these 4 and just, you know, go down the center, and we've taken the 3 that are on this side, yes, and routed them out the back. Now, when I initially tried to do stuff with the mixer, I very naively assumed that when things get to a T-junction, they're going to, you know, detect that there is a one-way diode sort of thing, and just not go down the path. Even though this path effectively just had a whole lot of pipe originally, so I had to put in a bunch of fluid transfers to act as one-way only gates. So that way, all of the fluid that I was trying to pump into here wouldn't go back into the network and try to circle around to other things. Now, another thing that you may have noticed, well, I've changed the layout of this a little bit so that we can, in fact, take our fluid input into this tank in the front where it makes sense. But I've also changed out some of the pipes for more fluid extractors, because what I found out is that fluid extractors do, in fact, behave as omnidirectional pipes as well. And just whichever extractor is on determines the flow direction. So when we're done with the melter, or the mixer, and we'll show the mixer in action, we can pump out the excess from this chamber and get it into the fluid vessel, which we can then return into the system. And so, that means that a lot, well, not a lot, a few of these pipe circuits that I'd constructed where I had like dual redundancies and one-way fluid transfers and stuff, like this one, for instance, I just slapped another fluid extractor on the spout, and now any excess that's in here, I can just pump back in. It's really quite nice. Now here we can see that there is one tank that is conspicuously lacking fluid, and this is the one where we're going to make our Dawnstone. So we have gold next to it, and we have copper next to it, and I don't think I explained this, but we did everything sort of based upon adjacencies. So we have nickel here, we have iron here, and we have copper here, and we've got the alloy for iron and nickel, Invar, here. We also have Constantan here, which is copper and nickel. And then if we keep going, we have brass, which is next to zinc, which is, you know, a create alloy. Down the way, because tin doesn't alloy with anything besides copper, and we already had 3 copper alloys down there, we put tin down here and molten bronze down here. And bronze, I think, can be used as a silence gem or silence tools material, but we don't really need it for anything else right now. Possibly some other stuff in Embers, but don't quote me on that. Naturally, we just have all the rest of our fluids arranged like so. So, what I was saying is that we have copper, we have gold. Let's go ahead and make some Dawnstone. And in order to do that, let's see, which one do I want to start with first? Let's start with the gold, because if I accidentally lose copper, it's less important. But we should, at some point, probably not see it go red, but let me double check what we have in here. Okay, so we have 11,000 here. Let's toggle this on. This should go red shortly. Yep. So that means that both of these are full up. Actually, just the one is full up. Never mind. That's okay. Now we can take the rest of our gold, pump it into here, then pump it into the middle chamber, and then let it flow back into the system. And we can see all the green info because now we have the Tinker's Lens in our offhand, which just gives us all that extra goodness. So if I toggle that off, let's see, let me just make sure everything is where I expect it to be. Now we can go ahead and do the copper. Yes, we can do the copper. Yep. And that should be more than enough. So let's see. Yep, we've got copper in there. Now we have copper in here. Oop. Excuse me? We do have copper in here, right? No! I never drained the nickel from the previous time. Now this is why I said let's do copper last, because, well, if we lose the copper, it's not really a big deal. We've got more of it. So whack it with a stick, and everything is gone. And now the nickel starts to drain out. Oh, yeah, that's right. But I need the copper out of there first, which means I need it out of there and just drain everything back into the system. And now the nickel is going to drain out from here, right? I think. Yes. There we go. Okay, very good. So now that the nickel is out of there and we are starting to see the problems with actually running a factory, is that, yeah, you need to make sure that all your valves and stuff are closed and that all your reaction vessels are drained. And now I'm very annoyed. But on the plus side, I don't think we lost any nickel in any of that, which is honestly, frankly, more important. We also have, I forgot to talk about this, we have a fluid dial on the bottom to show us exactly how much we have of a given fluid in the reaction chamber. So let's pump in some copper here, and you can see that it's already starting to work. We immediately start getting some embers into the centrifuge, and that is being pumped. Actually, it's not being pumped just yet. It's strictly in here. And now that we have more than a bucket, I'm going to toggle this lever, which is going to pump our output into the fluid vessel up above. That's shut off. I'm going to now toggle this on, which means that the output is getting routed into this fluid vessel. And lastly, we are going to go ahead and grab our bucket, put that there, toggle this lever, and then I'm going to need to, oh, okay, I'm actually going to have to drain that out and then basically do that. As we discovered, if something gets stuck in a pipe, you can't really undo it easily, and then you just kind of lose it. But thankfully, I've discovered this method where if you have more than 1,000 fluid in the whole system or whatever, you just empty it out. You just put it in a bucket a couple of times. And now we can pump this back into our intermediate vessel, and that's all good. Now we can take our last fluid transfer that we need here, and I can jump up here because it gives me a better angle, and then put it here on the corner. Yes. And then, yeah, so this is one thing that I noticed. When you, like, leave the session or change dimensions, I think, all of the liquids that are in the filters, they go completely transparent. And so that's something. I don't know if that's intentional or bug or whatever. It's so minor that it doesn't even really matter, in my opinion, but that could make it just ever so slightly better. Okay, so we just drain that back out into our vessel, and I think, whoa, okay, we actually have more of that than I expected. How are we doing on the fluids? Oh, okay, so I still just have a ton of copper. Yep, that makes sense. Oh, because I'm a donut, and I never actually closed that. Of course I didn't. Alright, this is fine. This is fine, yes, because eventually the excess copper is going to be imported into the machine, whereupon we can export it after we're done and, you know, put it back where it belongs. I'm going to start the Dawnstone outputting, and yes, we can follow the green trail all the way to this filter, where it is very happily filling up the last reservoir that we need. Ah, yes, now over here, there are two valves that I've decided that actually can remain open all the time, so long as we carefully toggle this one. And basically, now that I've imported all of the molten metals that I'm going to have at this stage in the game, then we can just leave these open, so that when we put any kind of ore in here, we will just naturally start to export the fluid that's in the melter and the fluid that's in the geologic separator. And the only reason that I had it off to begin with is because we didn't have everything in the system. And now that we do, it doesn't matter. Like, the worst case scenario, stuff gets a little gummed up because, you know, something went before something else, but eventually it'll just get into the fluid vessel, and then it'll all drain out into the relevant reservoir. And so, we have one last thing to do, and that is the thing that I'm most terrified to do, is test our stamper. Now, the thing is, I did a little bit of a test earlier, and we were able to crush, what was it, ember fragments or shards or something like that into ember dust. And so that could be a more or less economical way for us to power the embers at this point in time, just because we have the two heaters. But we can do so very much more than that. And because we are getting into the alchemy next, and I don't know if I'm definitely not doing that in this video, but I may or may not do it in this part of the the foundry. But let's take a look at embers. And what we want to do is probably, I think I want, see, this is the difficult thing. I think I need Dawnstone ingots, and we also need all of these aspecti. So I think I'm going to start with the Dawnstone ingot. Let's just do a real softball thing. And in order to do that, we just take the ingot stamp, we right-click on the stamper, and then I make sure that all of the valves are correctly closed. Let's see, that's the emitter, yes. That is the fluid return, so I think that's all good. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, I'm definitely going to need to add some signs down here for the next time, but for now, let's see, that's Constantan, so this should be, what, copper? So this should be the Dawnstone? Yep. So that's Dawnstone. Let's import some Dawnstone. And yeah, we can see that we are now punching Dawnstone ingots. Oh, that is so cool. Alrighty, and we can see, or depending upon where I clipped that, I just totally sent the remaining 60 millibuckets of Dawnstone back up here, and we just added this pipe down from the bottom. And I don't remember exactly when it was during the build that I figured that I would do that, but originally I was trying to fit the stamper in up here as well, and then I started getting into what can only be described as K mapping or K problem in graph theory, and I decided, you know, let's just simplify things for myself, let's add the third dimension back in, and we'll just put the stamper down here, and that seems to have worked out very marvelously. So let's send the Dawnstone back into its thing. There is a boss outside. We will be fighting that, and I'm probably going to get my butt handed to me. But yes, we have now made some very adequate progress in Embers, and let's finish this off with a fight. A fight during the day, because I can see other things are spawning, and that's not good. Alright, now, a fight during the day. Oh, snap! Oh, snap! It shoots ice! Woohoo! What? Oh, it shoots more than just ice. Oh god, it's a necromancer. It summons things. Oh, I know exactly what music I'm using for this part! Oof! Oh, just one more hit! One more hit! No! Oh, I got off a health potion. Come on, stop running away! No! Ow! Oh. Oh. Okay, let me just see what we got after that. We got Borkat's Ritualistic Clogram Sabatons of the Wizard. And I've actually been getting a couple of very interesting foot gear, but as long as this says life mending on it, I kind of don't want to get rid of it, at least until I put some kind of mending on all my other special gear. So we got an Electrocute Scroll, Borkat the Dirt Digger the name tag, which I'm going to put to something applicable, but that is going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified, and as always, I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, everybody. In the upper left is a video you might like, or the latest video in the series. In the lower left is the series playlist, and on the right is my icon, by which you can subscribe. Thanks again for watching!